You're listening to the Smart Policy Podcast, a production of the University of Tennessee's Institute for Public Service. Live music venues might not be the kind of place that pops into mind when you think about preventing overdose deaths, and that's even if you're a musician, a fan, or a venue owner. And even if you do think there should be naloxone at concerts, there might be concerns of legal liability or a fear that you might promote drug use at your club, or maybe even it's as simple as the nasal spray is just too expensive.
Naloxone is not always easy to find. One of the first things we do when we go on site at a place like Bonnaroo is we reach out to the security, and 9 out of 10 times they don't have naloxone on their person.
This is why Gibson Gives, the nonprofit wing of Gibson brand guitars, a personal favorite of mine, joined up with numerous other music-themed nonprofits to create Tempo, training and empowering musicians to prevent overdose. Tempo has recently made waves in Nashville with a pilot program in partnership with Hikma, the manufacturer of Kloxxado, as well as ONEbox, to distribute high-tech overdose-reversing first aid kits to music venues at no cost.
They call it the purple box, and look for the purple box when you're trying to save a life. And so it runs a video that walks you through saving somebody's life in real time.
We at the SMART Initiative were impressed by their immediate results, so we reached out to see about launching a similar program in Knoxville. Within a week of distributing some of the boxes ourselves, I got a call from one of the venue managers that they had already reversed an overdose, and they had used one of these purple boxes to do it. In this episode, I interview both Dendy Jarrett, the Executive Director of Gibson Gives, about Tempo and this program, as well as the manager of the Knoxville venue where that life was saved. Being a musician, a fan, or a venue employee in the age of fentanyl is unpredictable, and as a musician myself, this project means a lot to me personally. You don't want to miss this episode.
Gibson Gives is the philanthropic arm of Gibson Brands, Inc. We focus mainly on music education and music wellness. And out of the reimagination in 2019 of the Gibson Foundation to Gibson Gives, I got a call from a family friend. So my father was the commissioner of the Department of Health and Environmental Control in South Carolina. So I grew up in a household where public health was a supper time conversation about every night. And so I got a call from a family friend who owns a nonprofit in Charlotte and just said, "Hey, you're a musician." He did not even know I was at Gibson. He just called because I'm a musician. And his nonprofit provides drugs like insulin to families who need insulin and can't afford it. So but he'd kind of gotten into the overdose space, and he just said, "Why are we seeing such a spike in the music community in overdose?" And I said, "Well, as a musician, personally, it's just never a scene that I related to. I've never done drugs, but I've seen others do it, and I think it's because you're just in the environment. So you are putting yourself in a position to be exposed to it when you're a musician, whether it's a fan or just members of the band or members of the crew or whatever. So I don't think musicians by definition are druggies. Right. I think it's, and I'm air quoting around that, I think it's just because you're just in the environment. And so it's a little easier to access. And I just said, "Tell me what you're trying to do." And so that led to a conversation with Music Cares, who's one of our partners. It's part of the Grammys. Music Cares provides emergency assistance to musicians, and Music Cares already had a program, but it just never had gotten legs. And I just said, "Look, I totally believe that the rising tide will lift all boats. What if we just collaborate?" And so we created Tempo, which proudly my kids actually came up with the acronym. And Tempo is training and empowering musicians to prevent overdose. And you can find more about it at tempomission.org. And while it's a program of Gibson Gives, it's almost like a standalone entity. So we gave it its own website. And basically, we educate musicians on what overdose is, what overdose looks like. And then we provide naloxone and naloxone training. And so we started out at first putting these, this in practice at festivals like Bonnaroo or the Pilgrimage Festival, Coachella. And we now what's happened is Tempo has become 16 like-minded nonprofits that are all working together. So what's happened now is it's becoming a movement. It got the attention of Hikma. Hikma makes naloxone in an 8 milligram dose, and they made $1 million grant of product to help us facilitate growing this program. Naloxone is not always easy to find. One of the first things we do when we go on site at a place like Bonnaroo is we reach out to the security, and 9 out of 10 times they don't have naloxone on their person. And so the first thing we do is we give all the security people naloxone. The strange thing about naloxone training is a lot of people are kind of fearful,
right,
of what it is. If I give it, is it going to hurt somebody? Naloxone is benign. It will not hurt you. You can give it to an infant as young as 1 year old, and it will have no net negative effect. I'm not saying that there's not somebody out there that might be allergic to it, but by and large, it is a harmless product. If you suspect somebody's overdosing, give it to them. As Tempo grew, we started partnering with more and more of these nonprofits, and we're now putting the product on tour buses, at rehearsal facilities. And then this past January, we partnered with the Metro Nashville Police Department. They recognized in a sort of a heat map fashion, if you will, that there was a large spike in overdoses in Lower Broadway and Printers Alley and around some of the bigger areas where live music is prevalent. So we introduced the live music venue program with Tempo. We partnered with a company called ONEbox. This is a ONEbox. I know your radio audience can't see, but this is a ONEbox. It's a box that contains naloxone. And what's really brilliant about it is that when you open it up, it's got a CPR kit. We stock it with 2 doses of naloxone. But then when you open it, it will autoplay.
First off, let's take a deep breath. Step number 1 is to check to see if somebody really is unresponsive.
So it runs a video that walks you through saving somebody's life in real time. And then it also has a Spanish button, so you can press that for Spanish. It also has a training mode so that if you put one of these in a venue, they can train their staff just from the video that's in here. And it's a rechargeable system. So I actually open each one of these and I load it with 2 doses of Kloxxado, the 8 milligram dose. And then I hand apply the decal that says powered by Tempo with our tempomission.org website. I re-put it in the box. I seal the box back up, and then I mail them out. I do every single one of these by hand, by myself, because we are a team of a few, just very few. And so during meetings like we're having now, I'll be hand applying these labels to the boxes. But it's I'm rewarded by it because we're saving lives.
It reminds me of some of the prior conversations I've had. This problem seems so big, and how are we going to fix all this? And you just say, just one at a time, just one at a time.
It is the proverbial eating the elephant, one bite at a time, and that's how we're gonna. We have to attack this. And so we placed 70 of these in downtown Nashville, and it became really successful. We put them in right before 4th of July, and we got a call the week after that we had saved a life with one of these units. Fast forward, that program that we did in Nashville kind of got the attention of some folks in Knoxville. And so they reached out and said, hey, we kind of like what we saw here. Do you think we could replicate that program? And so we sent our first 10, I think it was 10 or 15 of the ONEboxes over to the SMART folks there at UT. And you guys placed, I think, 10 of them. And within a week, you'd already saved a life.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just really proof positive of why this is needed. Saving one life makes the entire effort worthwhile. And what you should know is that, now that we're putting these in Knoxville, that's got the attention of Athens, Georgia, Athens being a really strong music town with Indigo Girls and REM and Fred Schneider, B-52s, all coming out of that area. So now we're placing these in Athens, and that got the attention of a counterpart in Atlanta. And so now we're reaching out into Atlanta. We've been contacted by Waukesha County, and where Les Paul, who's famous for the Gibson Les Paul,
Sure,
he's from, and they want to do the program there in his honor. And so it's just really it's not a full-time focus for Gibson Gives. It is something that we do as we can, as we're growing it, but it's mushrooming rapidly.
Now that you've heard about Tempo and the ONEbox with Kloxxado, here's the venue manager in Knoxville talking to me about what it was like using one, as well as what it's like to be a venue manager and employee in the age of fentanyl. He has asked to remain anonymous.
I was going to say we've had 2 in the last probably 5 months. I heard an employee that's had to actually deal with it on her first day of work, and then again this weekend. It happened again, so that's about a 5-month span. She started back in May, so there's been 2 during that time period. The first one, we didn't have anything in the building. We called the paramedics. They came, used an Narcan.
Right.
Second time, you guys have brought the box in. We used that this past weekend. Also hired a new employee that started on that day, so we're now 2 for 2 for new employees that have had to deal with overdoses on the first day they started within a 5-month period. So, I was out of this business. I've been in this business for almost 24 years with about a 4-year break in it. But I got out between 2017 and 2021, 22, around that time. Started to get back into it. And it was just amazing, or not amazing, but just how much it's changed that, we went from an industry to where alcohol was the main focus, that we were worried about people getting too drunk at bars, and providing rides home.
Right.
And that was our main issue, was the ABC classes. And now we're dealing with that you can have somebody walk in your door and sit there and die, for nothing that we have done really, beknownst to us. So it's just crazy how much that's changed the responsibility of what we're asking our staff to do now. From, they've been certified with ABC for years, and that's always regulated by the state, and it's such a big deal that that's taken care of. Well, now, we've got this much, much, much more immense responsibility that's just going unnoticed, that I would say a majority of bars are probably having to deal with and just don't say much about it publicly. And that's, I don't know if they don't want to get a stigma that people are using drugs in their place or what it is. They don't want to be known for that, I would guess, but it's becoming to where it's not necessarily that you're known for it, everything's known for it, and I feel like just people aren't mentioning it these days.
Yeah. Already in our experience with this program, that's what we've encountered, is that many places are already carrying it and have already dealt with it, and the same hesitancy if they don't want to advertise. Like it's a strange situation to have saved a life but not want to advertise it.
Well, and it's also, I guess, there's cocaine that's kind of always gone along with bars,
right,
that usage has. And so
decades,
that's a problem, but now it's that, somebody that's doing that can have fentanyl mixed with it, and they, unbeknownst to them, and it's not even a choice that they made necessarily. They've chosen something to do something illegal, but it's not a conscious decision of something that they're known or familiar with.
Right, I want cocaine, I don't want opioids.
And it's getting mixed up, and it's so sometimes I think that we're dealing with issues where people just aren't aware of what's out there and what's going on. And it became to where it's just such a more immense thing, from chasing people out of the bathrooms or doing cocaine to picking people up off the floor. It's a totally different issue. So it's just and I'm not sure what we do about it to change that environment, or to change, or to even bring attention to it. Like, you will think with WBR or like our local news, somebody would do a news article on it or a story on it, but if they can't get people to interview or talk about it or point out, it's hard to even try to bring that up, or how many bars want to say, yeah, it happened at our place this year.
It's interesting to hear that there's already such a conversation behind the scenes. It does make sense, being that, like I said, from our perspective, we've certainly been seeing that people are saying they have seen it. And that lack of data is an issue. That's something we focus on a lot. But something that, when you told me about the incident, really stuck out to me was that you said, 7 minutes from identifying the situation to administering the naloxone?
Yeah, so what happened, I mean, just kind of details and why I'm kind of confident that it was an opioid-based something or another. Because you're always...
or were they just too drunk?
Yeah, were they too drunk with the overdose? But in this situation, somebody that we're familiar with that comes in here often, she drank one drink, was in this building within 5 minutes, and had gone from having that drink to passed out on the bar within 5 minutes. When the bathroom came back out, was passed out in the bar in 5 minutes. And one of our bartenders was mentioning, now I know the difference between somebody that's just passed out of the bar and someone that stopped breathing. She collapsed at the bar. They brought her over into a booth, and her lips were going purple, her fingernails were turning purple, like she had stopped breathing. Eyes had rolled back in her head. So they knew. I've got a video of it. You can see within probably the 7 minute span, she goes in the back, gets the box, starts calling 911. I think they give her that first dose of Narcan after they realize that she has completely stopped breathing. One of our bar patrons, actually sitting right here, gets up and goes and starts giving her CPR while they're on the phone at 911. They gave her the second dose of Narcan, and within minutes of that, she sat straight up in the floor. And within probably a minute of that, the EMTs walked in the building afterwards. So she was awake before they got here.
Do you think this should be standard in bars? That's such like a first aid kit for opioid response?
Yes, but I almost believe that it should be something that is dealt with the health department almost. It's like if they can regulate an ABC and require us to have a license to serve people, if we're going to have to deal with this responsibility, then, there should be some government backing in that, not just, I have a shot of Narcan other than the box because one of my employees, the same girl actually that got this box, and it's the one that's dealt with it twice now, ordered it for herself. She used the hotline and called and ordered it a free dose to bring into here.
Yeah.
We're relying on our employees to do that. It's so for us it was like trying to deal with also, do we now not allow that person to come back in because of the choices they make? And that's a whole other thing that we've got a whole list of people that we have banned because of different drug use, and that kind of thing. And it's now that's also in that topic. And we've ended up, we're going to ban her from the place because, to us, there was nothing else it could have been.
Well, even just the risk of
dealing with it, to us, it's not necessarily so much. It's not about them or the person in the incident. It's that why would you put that responsibility on us? Because that's what this is in a lot of situations, I feel like, is that, and that's, I think that some people might be reticent to the Narcan, and I don't know if that's ever been brought to you, that in a way there's a sense of enablement to it, that, people that are using those drugs feel like, well, it's safe, I can go out in public and use this because if I OD, I've got people around me that will take care of me, and Narcan's available, so that conversation has always kind of been in the back of my head of carrying it of like, are we enabling people to do that and making it feel like, well, it's no big deal. I go in a bar in a public atmosphere where it's safe, and if I OD, somebody will take care of me. But I don't now, after this situation, I don't think that, I think the answer is you still carry it regardless.
Right. Kind of like having a fire extinguisher, you hope you never have to use it.
Same kind of situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. It's interesting that this maybe changed the conversation a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that employee bought it and not allowed him to carry it. It was one of those things that was like, I don't think that, we advertised that we've got Narcan and stuff, but
Sure.
They asked, can we buy some? And said, yeah, we can buy some. So we had it 4 or 5 months ago that we had, decided should have it in there. But that was actually an incident that we had somebody else overdosing, that we didn't have anything. We had to call the paramedics and essentially had to wait until they got here and used it.
Well, considering what happened then and that the box has a training function, are you considering using that on your staff?
Yeah, I have a very small staff, and honestly, at this point, after that incident, there were 5 of the 8 employees I have here were here, so
Crash course.
they've all pretty much seen it at this point. And the remaining 2, I'm almost positive that the people involved are going to explain to them how, I work different shifts than a couple of them, but it will be conveyed to them to try to show them how to use that. But essentially, minors, opening is the biggest step. They just open the box and it's got the video started.
I really appreciate you speaking with me about this. I think your insight is extremely valuable. And like you said, not enough people are being open because they can't.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular you think you would like legislature, community leaders, health department? You've said some good things, I think, that are worth listening to. Is there anything else on your mind that you might like heard?
I don't think so necessarily, just that we're trying to do the best, and a lot of people, because when it does start to come out, or say people find out where things like that happen, that it's, we're not doing anything different than anybody else is.
Right.
It's not our fault that it happened. We're not providing an environment where those things can happen. It's rampant throughout the population and all different things. I'm to the point now where I feel like you're going to start seeing this in everyday just jobs. Somebody just come back, sit down at their desk and pass out. That it's not even going to be necessarily a bar situation. So it's, I think the stigma's got to get away from that. We're causing it or somehow providing an atmosphere that allows that to happen. And then once I feel like that thought changes a little bit, that people will start addressing with solving the issue. Ultimately, the stuff just needs to be quit being produced, but that's a whole nother topic.
That's an international topic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a much more bigger problem. But
all right.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Again, I think there's also a lot of concerns around liability, and the
Right.
Good Samaritan law really covers anybody. If you're making an effort to save somebody's life, that's what you need to do. And, the Good Samaritan laws kind of blankets you from any potential harm from that. I mean, we ran into issues in Nashville with some of the bigger venues because of they all have legal departments, and understandably, there's concern about liability and whatnot. And we actually ended up having the security firm for these advocate on our behalf. The head of the security firm is actually a former Nashville Metro police officer and a paramedic. So he understood the importance of this. And so he actually went to the legal team at these larger venues and advocated on our behalf and was able to break the barriers down. And, I think once people understand what we're trying to do, we're not trying to mark you as a place where overdose happens. Overdose is happening everywhere. It's not because of where you are or what you're doing now. Granted, Lower Broadway in Nashville sees a higher level of overdose, but it's because there's a higher level of concentration of people.
Right.
It's not because of, that people are going down there just to do drugs. It's just because there are more people there. So more people, more opportunity for overdose, and that's what's happening. And, quite frankly, people go out to have fun at a live music venue. That's where they're tending to do a little bit more drinking and a little more experimenting, and so that can also be a contributing factor.
Well, that's why we think of it as you put life preservers where there's water.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. There are some other laws worth keeping in mind that we've been telling people about, like a pending law. This one hasn't passed, but may, that would require any place that serves alcohol, which does include a lot of music venues, making a certain amount of sales to carry naloxone on board. And in fact, we did encounter that several places did already carry naloxone, but the location wasn't great. It was like in a box somewhere that wasn't easily accessible, or in a drawer or something. And there wasn't such a clear first aid type approach. And that was a big game changer, especially factoring in that this box also offers a training component. That was very appealing because a lot of people are unsure of how to even use the stuff.
Well, I think, to your point, the ONEbox with the autoplay video takes away a lot of the fear factor for a venue owner, because they're like, I don't know anything about it, but hey, guess what? This video will tell everything that we need to know about it. And so it takes away that fear barrier that might provide somebody to push back. And I think, a large part of this is just awareness. Jeremy, I think that, and to your point also, I believe that you probably face the possibility of more liability by not having it than by having it. And, think of a place catching on fire, not having a fire extinguisher, or a fire suppression system. I mean, that, I think that's why these laws are on the book, and I feel pretty confident they're going to pass, saying that you really have to have this product on display. What we try to do is that I will tell you that the guy who created the ONEbox is a musician. He's also a great Gibson fan, and he created it because he was attending a university, came upon a fellow student who was overdosing in a rehearsal room, and knew there was naloxone in the building, but it was locked in the dean's office, and they lost the student. And he was like, we need something that goes next to the first aid kit or next to the defib that, people will know. So they developed this thing, and they call it the purple box, and, look for the purple box when you're trying to save a life. And so they've partnered with us along with Hikma, and they provide these ONEboxes. That's not an inexpensive unit. It's about loaded with products, about $400 a piece. And then we just make them available to you guys. And of course, we do take donations at tempomission.org to help us fund the cost of distributing the boxes and that sort of thing. But we're happy to do it. We feel like that whether you're a musician or a fan of a musician, this is a crisis that we lost our minds when the pandemic hit, and this thing is killing more people than the pandemic ever thought about killing. And nobody's sounding the alarms. You're seeing more of it on like your nightly news and whatnot, but we should be shouting from the rooftops. It's really prevalent. And then, now we're seeing a lot of, unfortunately, residual deaths happening. Let's say parents checking into an Airbnb, and the previous person who stayed there used and left a residual. It gets on their kids' hands. The kids touch their mouth. They ingest it, and it doesn't take very much. It sends them into an overdose, and the parents don't know what's happening to their child. And unfortunately, the child dies. And I'm not making that story up. It's commonplace. And so I think just educating people that this is a crisis. And so we feel like that with Gibson Gives, with the Tempo program resonating through our artists, that we can make an impact and draw attention to what needs to be done.
So something that struck me, you mentioned how no one's raising the alarms in the space, and I certainly sympathize to that fact. Even the places we went to, there was enthusiasm for what we were seeking to do, and they took the box and so on and so forth. There has been repeatedly a hesitancy to be too loud, to openly identify as carrying it, or to even announce a success story, because there is a fear that they'll put out the we'll call it the illusion or the myth that this is where people do drugs. And the thing is, in my conversations with these managers in multiple venues, is it's happening everywhere. It's happening in every location.
It is.
There's not a place that isn't touched by it.
It is. And I mean, look, you think about, I'm much older than you, Jeremy, but I've played a lot of clubs in my life. And I can remember being in clubs where you couldn't see, the lead singer in front of you because there was so much smoke in the place. And we didn't know at the time that was not healthy for you. I mean, we kind of had an idea, but, society accepted that as a norm. We have to look at this like this makes cigarette smoke pale in comparison with the net negative effect and how fast and how rapidly this is growing at an epidemic rate in this country. And so Tempo, there are a lot of times with our Tempo mission that I feel like we're just not doing enough, but we're doing as much as we can. And I think, partnering with people like you guys and you taking it to live music venues, educating the owners there, and then saving a life. The first time they save a life, they're wanting more, and they're starting to tell their other club owners about this thing that happened, and they really need to reach out to you to have this product available. So we we fix this problem by raising awareness. And, you can't fix a problem until you admit that you have one. It's unfortunate that, and I will say this, Jeremy, and you probably can attest to this, for the longest time, I mean, this isn't really a new problem. I think that because of the level of fentanyl that we're seeing in product now, it's becoming more talked about. But this has been associated with shame for a lot of people for many, many years. This is the thing that the family didn't want to talk about. And when you don't talk about it, you lose lives. And so I think it's so important now that we as a society are opening up and acknowledging that we have this situation and we need to talk about it. Families need to talk about it. Kids need to be talked to about, don't take candy, don't take any kind of, what you think is an over-the-counter drug from a friend. You just don't do it. You just can't do it.
All right, well, Denny, it was awesome talking to you, man.
Same here, bro. I appreciate you.
For more episodes on in-depth discussions on Tennessee policies related to substance use disorder by a range of local experts, please subscribe to us wherever you get podcasts and visit our website at smart.tennessee.edu. I'm Jeremy Corvelis. Thank you for listening, and see you next month.